Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Beth, and I just finished reading Among Friends by Hal Ebbott. Please forgive me if I'm butchering this name. This was my pick for Book of the Month of July. This book was published in late June of this year and is about 300 pages long. So, please check your triggers with this book. It is a very depressing novel. There's really no happiness to be had in this book. I'm going to be honest. I think that if you are in a dark place, this is not the book you should be reading. And I think that to a degree, it's a very harrowing story. It basically centers around these two upper class families, mostly around the relationship between Amos and Emerson. They are the two male patriarchs, and they have been friends since college. And they have this really enduring bond that has kind of created their entire lives. It's just kind of been this stable relationship that set up all of the relationships that they've had. And it really just, that's how they became the men they currently are. And I think to a degree it has that beauty of male and male relationship, but there is a betrayal that happens in the story that is quite disturbing. Like I said, please check your triggers of molestation, abuse, neglect. A lot of that is covered in this novel. I don't think there's anything explicitly graphic, really at all, but it's just the way that a lot of these things is written is very raw, and there's a lot of emotional intensity. I'm going to say this. I think that there are certain parts of this book that is a masterpiece. I think that some of the writing is very much spot on with how humans are, how like someone might react, and how you can empathize with someone that might be a monster, might not be a monster. So like I said, general premise, these two relationships, and a betrayal happens during Emerson's 52nd birthday when he's celebrating it. And a lot of the story includes the interaction between the two families, not just these two men, but their wives. Amos's wife, Claire, who is a doctor. Rusty, who is Emerson's wife, who is a stay-at-home mother. They're both very, upper-class families. They both have daughters. Anna is Amos's daughter. And, oh goodness. Sophie is Emerson's daughter. Sorry, that took me a moment to remember the names. Essentially, so you kind of see how both of these men have their daughters are basically the same age. They're basically going through the same points of their life at the same time together. And I think that's what makes it so painful, is the fact there comes a point in the novel where they have to decide, do they still keep a life together given this betrayal, or do they kind of shift apart? How are the wives functioning into this? What do they believe? What do they not believe? It's a lot of the story is of trust and belief, and what to do when someone has done you wrong. Do you stand by your morals, or do you set them aside for your own selfishness? There is a really cheap ploy near the end where it just bugs me that it does this, but at the same time, it's written well. You'll know what I'm talking about if you read the book. I'm going to say this now. I do recommend the novel, but I do have some qualms with it. So, like the fact that I forgot one of the daughters' names, a lot of the characters, I'm not going to say they feel wooden, but they're not that well developed. There's certain aspects of their personality where you understand exactly how they're thinking, how they're reacting, but there's a little bit too much overlap between certain characters and how they feel. I feel one of the strongest characters we have is Amos, and that is due to his maybe differing backstory coming into this. He came from poverty. He's not upper class like the others. He's kind of an immigrant to this. He's not country club living, but he's become country club living just due to his, prestigious career as a therapist and his ability, to use his brains to move up in life. That's what he was able to do. So he definitely has his own way of thinking, and he's very different from the others. But then you have his wife, Claire, who's good friends with Emerson, because, you know, they knew each other first before he was introduced. And I feel like a lot of the way they think is a little too similar for my taste. I don't feel that Claire even, as a woman, I don't feel like she's written well as a woman. I think there's a little bit of a struggle there at the author. Maybe it's because it is a male author. Maybe it's because it is his first work. This is a debut novel. I think that a lot of the women just fall a little flat to me. But a lot of the raw emotions, a lot of the way that, you know, someone reacts to something is very well done, if that makes sense. Personality-wise, a bit bland, but the actual thought process and action was very well done to me. So, writing in general, I think certain parts are just masterpiece, very well phrased, perfect. And then other parts, it's a little bit muddy. I think that the way that it's written, it is third person, but it's third person for people's perspective depending on where you are in the book, and it never actually states it. There's only a few points where it got a little bit confusing to me. I'm like, oh, who am I supposed to be following right now? And then other points where I was like, okay, I get it. I'm not bothered by this. Everything is fine. But like I said, there are a few points in the novel where I think it gets a little bit muddy, and I didn't like it. There's also just a few passages where I kind of felt like skipping over. I didn't, but I felt like it. Very, very small passages, but the fact that it did happen did kind of mean to me, okay, maybe, not the most like certain sections, very polished, very well done. Other sections, not so much. I'm going to say this, I think this is a recommendation for me. I think I'm actually really excited to read what else this author is going to bring forward next. Please check your triggers. Like I said, this is a very sad book. I think that be careful when and how you read this, but I think that my life was enriched by reading this. This isn't the strongest of recommendations, but I am going to recommend it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my book review, and have a good one.